The security guard's massive fingers, thick as sausages, dug painfully into the fleshy part of my arm as he bodily hauled me across the polished expanse of the lobby floor, dragging me toward the towering exit doors. Every single person within the grand hall, dozens of wealthy guests, staff, and visitors, had stopped their conversations, their movements, their very breathing, to watch the spectacle. Some were openly filming the scene with their high-end phones, their faces a mix of morbid curiosity and judgmental satisfaction. The manager, Patricia, stood a few feet back, arms rigidly crossed over her tailored burgundy suit, a contemptuous smirk plastered across her lips, clearly savoring every agonizing second of my public humiliation. It was the lowest point of my entire life. Then, just as I thought the shame couldn't possibly deepen, the executive elevator doors, the ones reserved for VIPs and ownership, slid open without a sound, and my husband emerged. Game over. Wait, before I recount the minute-by-minute disintegration of their careers and the exquisite karma that followed, please take 2 seconds and smash that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear is a true, raw story of unbelievable cruelty, instant karma, and justice served ice-cold. This isn't just a story about a bad day. This is about classism weaponized. Let's go. My name is Camila Rodriguez, and 4 years ago, my world was defined by the clatter of porcelain and the smell of stale coffee. I was a minimum-wage waitress at a small, greasy diner downtown, barely managing to pay rent on a microscopic apartment where the ceiling constantly leaked near the kitchenette. That grim reality was where I met Adrian. He walked in one miserable, rainy Tuesday morning, shaking water off the shoulders of a coat that probably cost more than my annual salary. He ordered a simple black coffee and took a seat by the fogged-up window, immediately absorbed in his sleek laptop. I remember watching him absently. Then something caught my eye. A homeless man, soaked through and shivering violently, hunched over in the entryway alcove. Without a word, without looking to see if anyone was watching, Adrian simply stood up, walked outside, and draped his expensive, tailored wool jacket over the man's shoulders. He didn't ask for thanks. He just came back inside and continued working in his shirt sleeves. No cameras, no audience, just pure, unadulterated kindness. That single, quiet moment fundamentally changed my life forever. We started talking that day, and 3 months later we were inseparable. 6 months after that, he dropped to one knee holding a simple but perfect antique ring. I said yes without a second of hesitation. Now, here is the essential truth most people struggle to grasp about me. When I married Adrian, I married the man, the beautiful soul I saw give away his jacket. I absolutely did not marry his galactic net worth. He owns the Rodriguez Group, a sprawling chain of luxury hotels and resorts spanning across 15 countries. His financial value is a number so enormous, I genuinely prefer not to contemplate it. But despite being married to all that power and wealth, I stubbornly refused to change the core of who I was. I still hunt for treasures at local thrift stores. I still find comfort in my favorite, worn-out old jeans and oversized sweaters. You will never catch me carrying a designer handbag or wearing conspicuous, expensive jewelry. Adrian doesn't just tolerate this about me. He adores it. He often says, in a world drowning in transactional relationships and fake people, Camila, you are the most genuine, real thing I have ever found. 3 weeks ago, Adrian flew to Singapore to finalize an extremely critical business deal. We spoke every night, but I missed him with a physical ache. Our sprawling house felt vast and echoingly empty without the deep resonance of his laugh and the reassuring weight of his presence. So, last Thursday, completely impulsively, I decided to execute a massive surprise. I knew he was staying at our flagship hotel, the Grand Meridian, wrapping up final details before flying home. I booked a last-minute red-eye flight, tossed a few essential items into my trusty backpack, and raced toward the airport. I told no one. Not him, not my friends, not his assistant. When I landed, I was utterly spent. The 5-hour flight had left me looking exactly like what I was. A tired woman in desperate need of a shower. My hair was gathered into a disastrous, messy bun. I wore absolutely no makeup, and I was dressed in my most comfortable uniform. my favorite faded Levi's, the old, slightly pilled cardigan my grandmother had gifted me, and my decades-old scuffed running sneakers. I flagged a taxi directly to the hotel, my heart fluttering with nervous excitement. I imagined the look on Adrian's face when I knocked on the door of his penthouse suite, the pure shock and joy. The taxi pulled up to the Grand Meridian, and as I stepped out, I felt that familiar, quiet surge of pride. The structure was breathtaking, gleaming with imported white marble and glittering gold accents, its magnificent fountains dancing like liquid sculptures in the late afternoon sun. My husband built this. It was the physical manifestation of his vision and relentless hard work. The uniformed doorman, a man named Carlos, stood rigidly at the entrance. As I approached, he gave me a long, sweeping look, hesitated noticeably, and then very slowly extended his hand to open the revolving door. His expression was one of overt distaste, as if he had just caught a whiff of something foul and unwelcome. I definitely noticed it, but I convinced myself to brush it off. Perhaps he was simply having a horrible day. I walked through those enormous golden revolving doors and into the colossal lobby. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and money. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars glittered overhead, reflecting in the marble floors so flawlessly polished they provided a mirror image of the ceiling. A few impeccably dressed guests glided through the space, clad in suits costing thousands and designer dresses that screamed high fashion. I made a direct line for the reception desk, eager to check in quickly so I could head upstairs and surprise Adrian. The receptionist, a severe young woman whose name tag identified her as Jessica, was deeply engaged on the phone. She flicked her eyes up at me for the briefest moment, and I swear I caught her eyes rolling back into her head before she deliberately shifted her posture, turning her back slightly. I stood patiently, waiting my turn. 1 minute passed, then 2, then a full 3 minutes. She was clearly gossiping with a friend, laughing loudly about some ridiculous weekend plans while I stood there, utterly invisible. Finally, after an eternity of waiting, she ended the call with a theatrical sigh and looked up at me with the coldest, most brittle expression imaginable. "Can I possibly help you?" Her tone was glacial, delivered with the clear implication that acknowledging my existence was already doing me a massive, exhausting favor. I offered her a genuine, warm smile, attempting to melt her iciness with unexpected kindness. "Yes. Hi, I have a reservation booked. Camila Rodriguez." She began typing on her keyboard with deliberate, agonizingly slow movements, her long, brightly manicured acrylic nails clicking sharply against the plastic keys. She stared at the screen, then glanced briefly at me, then back at the screen again, maintaining a heavy, bored silence. "I don't see any reservation under that name." My smile withered slightly. "That's very strange. I booked it online yesterday. Let me quickly pull up the confirmation." I retrieved my phone, navigated to the email, and presented the screen showing the confirmation number and all the booking details. Jessica barely deigned to give it a passing glance. "That could easily be photoshopped. Anyone can fake those electronic confirmations." I blinked, genuinely stunned. "I'm sorry, what are you saying? Why on earth would I Photoshop a hotel confirmation?" "Ma'am, we get all kinds of desperate people attempting to scam their way into luxury hotels on a daily basis. Can you check again? Perhaps you mistakenly booked at a different, less expensive location." The way she pronounced the phrase luxury hotels was like a vicious verbal slap, underscoring her belief that someone dressed like me could not possibly belong in such a high-class establishment. I took a deep, steadying breath, fighting to maintain my composure. "No, it is absolutely this location. Please, can you check again? Maybe try looking under my husband's name, Adrian Rodriguez." Her thin eyebrow shot up into a perfect arch. "Adrian Rodriguez. The Adrian Rodriguez. You are claiming you are married to the actual owner of this entire hotel chain?" She let out a short, incredulous burst of laughter, and I noticed 2 other staff members, a slender bellboy named Ben and another receptionist named Sophia, had completely stopped their tasks and were now watching our exchange intently. They were whispering to each other, their faces alight with malicious amusement. "Yes, I am. Can you please, for the love of God, just check the system for the reservation?" Jessica sighed dramatically, making the entire action a weary performance for her colleagues' benefit. Sure, honey. Let me humor you. More deliberate, slow typing ensued. By now, a high-profile-looking guest had lined up behind me, huffing impatiently and rattling his keys. I felt my cheeks growing hot with embarrassment, but I kept my spine straight, determined to stay calm. That's when the manager swept onto the scene. Jessica, is there a problem brewing here? Her voice was an ice pick, sharp, authoritative, and utterly self-important. She was exceptionally tall, wearing a powerful, expensive-looking burgundy pantsuit. Her dark hair pulled back into a severe bun so tight it looked agonizingly painful. Her name tag prominently read, Patricia, Guest Services Manager. Jessica's face instantly brightened as if her cavalry had arrived. Patricia, we have a delicate situation. This woman claims she has a reservation, but I can't locate anything in the system, and frankly, she has provided a faked email confirmation. She also claims to be married to Mr. Rodriguez. Patricia turned her full attention to me, and the look she gave me made my stomach drop with sickening speed. It was pure, unadulterated judgment, mingled with overt disgust. She slowly looked me up and down, a detailed inventory of my appearance, taking in my disastrous hair, my old, comfortable clothes, and my scuffed, unfashionable sneakers. What seems to be the problem here? The heavy emphasis she placed on the word here felt entirely intentional, suggesting that I was the problem simply by daring to exist in her pristine, upscale space. I explained everything again, calmly and rationally, extending my phone with the confirmation email visible. Patricia barely spared the screen a glance. Instead, she crossed her arms tightly over her chest and tilted her head in a gesture of dismissive skepticism. Ma'am, are you absolutely certain you can afford our accommodations? Our standard entry-level rooms begin at $800 per evening. Perhaps there has been some genuine confusion on your part. Have you thoroughly checked the budget motel down on 5th Street? The magnificent lobby seemed to grow deathly quiet. Or perhaps it was just the deafening rush of blood thundering in my ears. I can afford it. I have a confirmed reservation. I showed you the confirmation. Patricia turned back to Jessica, her eyes narrowed. Did you bother to verify her credit card on file? Jessica took my credit card and swiped it with exaggerated, theatrical slowness. We all waited. It declined. That is completely impossible, I insisted, my voice trembling slightly now. Try it again immediately. Patricia's smirk returned, widening into something genuinely cruel. Ma'am, we do not accept non-functioning cards. And honestly, this entire elaborate fabrication about being married to Mr. Rodriguez? Do you genuinely expect any of us to believe that absurdity? Jessica leaned in towards Sophia and whispered, loud enough for me and everyone nearby to hear. Probably stolen anyway. A very well-dressed, older woman standing nearby muttered audibly to her companion. Some people truly have no shame trying to scam their way into legitimate luxury hotels. I felt the immense walls of the building closing in around me. More people were now gathering, creating a dense, growing audience for my intense humiliation. I want to speak to the general manager right now. Patricia actually emitted a sharp, high-pitched laugh. I am the manager, and I am telling you with full authority that you need to leave this establishment immediately. Then call the owner. Call Adrian. Patricia's laughter intensified, becoming harsh and scornful. The owner? You honestly believe the owner of a global hotel chain has time for this? For you? She turned to Jessica with a hard expression. Should we summon the police? Or is security sufficient to remove this distraction? My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I frantically tried calling Adrian's private number. It went straight to voicemail, confirming he was likely in a critical meeting. Patricia watched me try and shook her head, mocking my desperation. Oh look, making fake phone calls now. This is progressing from pathetic to genuinely sad. She pulled out a radio attached to her suit. Frank, Tony, I need both of you at reception immediately. We have a trespasser who is refusing to leave. I am not trespassing. I have a reservation. My voice was rising now, edged with pure, raw desperation. Within seconds, two absolutely massive security guards appeared. Frank and Tony, according to their name tags, were towering figures of pure muscle and intimidation, looking like they had been cast directly from an action movie. Patricia pointed at me with a gesture of ultimate contempt, as if I were a piece of refuse that needed quick disposal. Escort this woman out of the hotel. She is trespassing and has attempted to defraud the company. I couldn't process that this horrifying event was actually happening. Please, just listen to me. I am telling you the truth. I am Camila Rodriguez. This is my husband's hotel. I own. Frank grabbed my left arm first. His grip was instant, crushing, and terribly painful. Tony immediately mirrored him on the right arm, grabbing me just as roughly. Let's go, lady. Don't make this any more difficult than it needs to be. Don't touch me. Let go of me right now. I tried desperately to pull away, but their powerful grips only tightened painfully. They began forcefully dragging me toward the exit. My feet stumbled awkwardly over the highly polished marble floor. My backpack slipped completely off my shoulder, falling to the ground with a muffled thump, and all my meager belongings spilled out. My phone, my worn leather wallet, my house keys, a simple lip balm, scattering across the pristine floor. Leave it, Patricia called out triumphantly, following closely behind us like she was narrating a thrilling public show. Security will throw that junk in the trash where it rightfully belongs. This is precisely what happens when lowlifes try to scam legitimate luxury hotels. Let this be a vivid lesson. Ben, the smirking bellboy, actually kicked some of my scattered belongings aside as we passed, letting out a callous laugh. Sophia was holding up her phone, recording the entire spectacle. Other guests had their phones out too. I distinctly heard someone nearby say, "This is definitely going viral." Tears began streaming down my face now, hot and unstoppable. They were not only tears of profound shame and humiliation, but also from the sharp, shooting pain of their grips on my arms, and the overwhelming injustice of the situation. We were perhaps only 10 feet from the revolving doors. I could see the exit getting closer and closer. Frank and Tony were practically lifting me off the ground with their brute force. "Please," I begged, my voice cracking entirely. "Just let me explain." "Save it, lady," Frank grunted, his face impassive. "We've seen your type hundreds of times before. You people think you can just walk into places like this and... *ding. The crisp, unmistakable chime of the executive elevator cutting through the violent chaos. Everything seemed to shift into slow motion. The movement of the guards, the laughter, the sound of my sobbing. The mirrored steel door slid silently open, and there he was. Adrian. My husband. He must have arrived back from Singapore unexpectedly early to surprise me. He was wearing his impeccable charcoal suit, his Italian leather briefcase firmly in hand, looking utterly exhausted but clearly happy, until his eyes landed squarely on the brutal scene unfolding directly in front of him. I watched his expression cycle through several rapid stages. Confusion first, his eyes narrowing slightly, squinting to make sense of his wife being assaulted by two muscle-bound men. Then, sudden, absolute recognition. That was his beloved Camila being dragged like refuse across the lobby of his hotel. And finally, pure, incandescent rage. Unfiltered, terrifying, seismic rage. His face immediately flushed a dark, dangerous red, and his jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitching from across the massive lobby. "Stop!" His voice wasn't yelled. It boomed. It cut through the entire space like a physical whip, echoing off the marble and crystal, instantly silencing the gossip and the laughter. It was a voice I had never, ever heard him use before. Commanding, absolute, and utterly terrifying. Everyone froze. Frank and Tony's hands were still clamped painfully on my arms, but their bodies had instantly ceased all movement. Every single person in that luxurious lobby, from the high society guests to the cowering staff, instantly swiveled to look at the man who had just commanded the room. Patricia, who had been preening and smirking just seconds ago, suddenly looked confused, her smile dissolving into bewilderment. Adrian strode toward us, his pace accelerating with every long step. He wasn't simply walking, He was charging, radiating lethal intent. I said stop. Patricia, still completely oblivious to the impending disaster, stepped forward, attempting to assert her authority. Sir, this incident does not concern you. We are simply removing a trespasser who... Release her. Now. The way he delivered that command left no room whatsoever for argument or delay. It was final and absolute. Frank and Tony instantly dropped my arms as if they had been burned, stepping back quickly with their hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Adrian reached me in 2 massive strides, his hands instantly cupping my tear-streaked face, his eyes frantically scanning my arms and shoulders for signs of injury. Are you hurt? Did they physically hurt you? Camila, baby, look at me. Are you okay? I couldn't form words. I just shook my head violently and instantly collapsed into his chest, the sobs pouring out uncontrollably. His arms wrapped around me with fierce, protective strength. I felt his heart hammering a furious rhythm against my cheek. Behind us, I heard Patricia's voice, small, brittle, and terribly confused. Mr. Rodriguez. We didn't. Then the dawning, catastrophic realization hit her. I felt it in the sudden, sharp intake of breath, in the way the atmosphere in the lobby changed from smug confidence to utter panic. Oh my God. Oh my God. She's really... Adrian pulled back only slightly, his hands still gripping my shoulders, forcing me to look into his blazing eyes. Tell me everything. Right now. What exactly did they do to you? Through my choking tears, I managed to recount the entire ordeal. Every degrading detail. How Jessica had deliberately ignored me and treated me like garbage. How Patricia had mocked me, suggested I should stay at a cheap motel, and outright accused me of criminal scamming. How they had called me a liar when I claimed to be his wife. How security had roughly grabbed me, dragged me, and how my personal belongings were kicked across the floor by a laughing staff member. How I had been utterly humiliated in front of dozens of strangers. With every word that left my mouth, I watched Adrian's expression darken further. His jaw clenched tighter and tighter, and a prominent vein in his forehead began throbbing visibly. When I finally finished the story, he turned slowly, pivoting to face Patricia, and the look he gave her was one of such frozen hostility it could have extinguished a flame. What did you do? It wasn't a question seeking information. It was a death sentence delivered. Patricia's face had instantly drained from its normal florid red to a ghostly white. Mr. Rodriguez, I truly didn't know. She didn't properly identify herself. She looked. She gestured weakly at my old clothes, then immediately regretted the action, pulling her hand back swiftly. She looked what, Patricia? I thought. We have protocols for suspicious persons. I was simply protecting the hotel standards. Her voice was shrinking with every useless word. Standards? Adrian's voice dropped to a deadly, quiet whisper, which was somehow infinitely more chilling than the earlier booming yell. Your standard is to judge people by their appearance, to manhandle them, to publicly humiliate them, to physically assault my wife? The word wife echoed through the silent lobby, a collective gasp rippling through the observers. Jessica looked utterly stricken, like she might actually faint onto the marble. Frank and Tony had backed up several more steps, seeking safety in distance. Adrian pulled out his cell phone, his movements precise and lethal. Harper, get to the Grand Meridian now. I do not care if you are in a crucial meeting. I don't care if you're attending your daughter's wedding. Get here in the next 15 minutes, or you can start looking for a new job immediately. Mr. Harper was the regional director and Adrian's most trusted right-hand man. If Adrian was calling him with that tone, the situation was beyond serious. Adrian turned his gaze to the security guards. Frank and Tony, is it? Stay exactly where you are standing. Move 1 inch and I will personally have both of you arrested for felony assault and battery. He looked back at Patricia. You two don't even think about leaving the premises. Then to Jessica. Come out from behind that desk right now. Jessica was openly sobbing. Please, Mr. Rodriguez. I desperately need this job. I have student loans. I can't. You should have carefully considered that fact before you assaulted my wife. Before you falsely called her a scammer. before you derived sick pleasure from humiliating her. I slowly bent down, intending to gather my scattered belongings. A kindly older guest, a woman wearing an elegant pearl necklace who had silently watched the whole exchange, knelt down immediately to help me. "I'm so deeply sorry, dear," she whispered, helping me collect my keys. "We all should have spoken up." "We all should have," Adrian confirmed quietly, helping me stand up, his arm wrapping firmly around my waist, keeping me anchored close to his side. More guests continued to gather, morbidly watching the scene unfold. Some looked profoundly ashamed, others simply shocked. A few dedicated onlookers were still recording the drama. 14 minutes later, Mr. Harper burst through the lobby doors, his face flushed scarlet, his expensive tie askew. He took one look at the terrifying intensity of Adrian's expression and went instantly pale. "Sir, what in God's name happened?" "Your staff," Adrian enunciated slowly with dangerous calm, "just physically assaulted, publicly humiliated, and attempted to forcibly remove my wife from our hotel." "Our hotel, Harper?" "The one we specifically built on the principle that everyone, regardless of their apparent status, deserves dignity and respect." Harper turned to look at me, his eyes widening in pure horror. "Mrs. Rodriguez. Oh God. Oh my God." He spun back toward Patricia. "Patricia, what exactly have you done?" Patricia tried desperately to explain, her words tumbling over each other in a panicked rush. She didn't accurately state who she was. She looked ordinary. "We receive scammers constantly. How were we supposed to know? And that makes this acceptable?" I found my voice finally, cutting through her pathetic defense. "That makes it okay to treat a human being like absolute garbage simply because they look ordinary?" Patricia opened her mouth to argue, then closed it sharply. She had no answer. Harper pulled out his radio immediately. "I need every frame of security footage from the main lobby for the past hour. Send it directly to my tablet immediately." We retreated to a discreet private office just off the lobby entrance. Adrian kept his supportive arm wrapped around me the entire time. Within minutes, Harper had the high-definition footage queued up. We watched the entire, sickening film, my patient waiting at the desk, Jessica's disdainful eye rolls, Patricia's cruel, mocking smile, the public interrogation and mockery, Frank and Tony brutally grabbing my arms, Ben, the bellboy, casually kicking my belongings, Sophia filming and laughing along. Every humiliating, horrible second was captured in flawless, crystal-clear high definition. Harper's hands were visibly shaking as he watched. This is absolutely unacceptable. This is grounds for immediate termination." "All of them." Adrian stood up, his posture rigid. His decision was clearly made. "Gather them. All of them. In the main lobby. Now." 5 minutes later, Patricia, Jessica, Frank, Tony, Ben, and Sophia stood lined up rigidly in a row directly in front of the massive reception desk. Other staff members had gathered, looking frightened and utterly confused. Guests watched the unfolding drama from a respectful distance. Adrian stood positioned squarely in front of them, and when he finally spoke, his voice was amplified by the sheer silence of the room, carrying clearly to every remote corner of that lobby. "I built this company on one foundational principle. Treat people with dignity. Every person, rich or poor, dressed in a designer garment or wearing jeans from a thrift store, it fundamentally does not matter. Everyone deserves respect. What happened here today is the complete radical opposite of everything we stand for." He pointed a rigid finger directly at Patricia. "You are fired. You have exactly 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and immediately leave these premises. Security will personally escort you out." Patricia's legs actually buckled beneath her. "But I've worked here for 12 years. I have a mortgage. I have children. You should have carefully considered that fact before you had my wife dragged across this floor like a common criminal. You had 12 years here to acquire basic human decency. You failed." He moved his attention to Jessica. "Fired. You actively participated in the humiliation. You called her a scammer. You laughed at her pain. Please." Jessica was completely dissolving into tears now. I will do anything. I need this job. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. You are not sorry you did it. You are simply sorry you got caught. There is a critical difference between those two things. Frank and Tony were next. You put your hands on a woman. You hurt her. You forcefully dragged her. Fired. Both of you. Frank tried pathetically to defend himself. We were just following specific orders, sir. Following orders to be cruel? Following orders to assault someone? That is your defense? Adrian shook his head in disgust. Get out. Ben, the bellboy who had maliciously kicked my belongings. Fired. Sophia, who had stood filming and laughing. Fired. All 6 of them stood there in stunned silence. Some were openly crying. Patricia had actually dropped entirely to her knees, begging and pleading, but Adrian was absolutely unmoved. Harper quickly called for a different set of security guards to ensure the dismissed employees were escorted out. One by one, they were walked through the exact same revolving doors they had tried to violently force me through, the same exit toward which they had mocked my despair. The vast lobby was left silent except for Patricia's hysterical sobs echoing faintly as she was finally led away. Adrian turned to address the remaining staff members. Let this moment be absolutely clear. This behavior, this specific display of class-based discrimination, will never be tolerated. Not here. Not anywhere within our entire company. We will be implementing immediate changes. Mandatory respect training for every single employee, extensive mystery shopper programs, a complete review of our policies, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. He looked hard at Harper. You, Harper, are on probation. You hired these people. You trained them. This inexcusable event happened entirely under your watch. You have 6 months to prove to me that this will never, ever happen again. Understood? Harper nodded miserably, looking instantly 10 years older. Understood, sir. It won't. I promise you. Adrian gently took my hand and led me toward the executive elevator. As the doors silently slid shut, I could see the faces of every single person left in that lobby. Faces filled with shame, shock, and profound fear. Good. They absolutely should feel all of those things. Upstairs, in the hushed opulence of the penthouse suite, Adrian held me while I truly cried. All the bottled-up fear, the staggering humiliation, and the sharp physical pain came pouring out of me. He didn't try to talk me out of it. He just held me tightly, stroked my hair, and allowed me to feel everything I desperately needed to feel. When I finally calmed down, he gently pulled back and looked at me with deep seriousness. Do you want to change how you dress from now on, Camila? I will understand completely if you feel you need to. For safety. For your peace of mind. No. I cut him off firmly. No, Adrian. The security guard's thick fingers sank painfully deep into the flesh of my arm as he violently dragged me across the polished expanse toward the gilded exit doors. Every high-status person in that cathedral of a lobby was staring, a hungry audience. Some lifted their diamond-encrusted phones, lenses focused on my utter ruin. The manager, Patricia, stood a few feet back, smirking, her arms tightly crossed, savoring every excruciating second of my public humiliation like a gourmet meal. Then the private executive elevator chimed softly. The polished brass doors parted, and my husband stepped out. Game over. Wait, before I drag you through the sickening details of how this nightmare unfolded, you absolutely need to smash that subscribe button right now because what you're about to hear is going to make your blood boil with righteous fury. This isn't just a story. It's a brutal, true account of petty cruelty, instantaneous karma, and high-definition instant justice. Let's dive in. My name is Camila Rodriguez, and 4 years ago, I was navigating life on the margins. I was serving watered-down coffee at a greasy downtown diner, living paycheck to paycheck in a cramped, threadbare apartment where the ceiling leaked every time it rained. That's where fate introduced me to Adrian. He walked into that rundown diner one brutally cold, rainy Tuesday morning. He ordered the standard black coffee, no fancy lattes, and quietly took a window booth, his focus fixed entirely on his slim, high-end laptop. I remember the exact moment my life shifted on its axis. I watched him, completely unobserved by anyone else, slip off his impossibly expensive, tailored cashmere coat and hand it to a homeless man huddled and shivering outside. No fanfares, no cameras, no audience seeking validation. Just an act of pure, unadulterated human kindness. That single, genuine moment irrevocably changed the trajectory of my life. We started with easy conversation over burnt coffee, and within 3 months, we were utterly inseparable, a perfect, unexpected fit. 6 months after that first black coffee, he proposed. I didn't need a single second to think. I said yes without hesitation. Now, here is the crucial fact that nearly everyone seems to miss or misunderstand about me. When I married Adrian, I married the man, the genuine soul I fell for, not the vast empire he controls. He is the majority owner of an international chain of hyper-luxury hotels that span 15 countries. His net worth is a number so astronomical I actively choose not to dwell on it. But despite all that staggering wealth, I have adamantly refused to let it change the core of who I am. I still happily hunt for treasures at local thrift stores. I still wear my favorite, battered, and comfortable old jeans and the soft sweaters I've had for a decade. You won't find me draped in designer handbags, nor will I wear expensive, heavy jewelry. Adrian doesn't just tolerate this about me. He deeply loves it. He often tells me, with a profound sincerity that melts me, in a world populated entirely by fake people and calculated moves, Camila, you are the most profoundly real thing I have ever found. 3 weeks ago, Adrian left for an important, high-stakes business deal in Singapore. We spoke on the phone every single night, but his absence left a gaping, aching hole in my life. The massive house felt cavernous and empty without the sound of his laugh, without his grounding, vibrant presence. So, last Thursday I hatched a plan to surprise him. I knew he was staying at our Asian flagship property, the legendary Grand Meridian, wrapping up some final crucial meetings before finally heading home. I booked a wildly last-minute flight, tossed a few essentials and clothes into an old, soft backpack, and raced toward the airport. I told no one I was coming. Not him, not our staff, not anyone. When I finally landed hours later, I was utterly spent. My hair was hastily shoved into a messy, half-falling-out bun. I wore no makeup, just the exhaustion lines around my eyes, and I was dressed in my familiar uniform. My most faded, comfortable jeans, a beloved, worn-out cardigan my grandmother gave me years ago, and scuffed, broken-in sneakers. I looked precisely like what I was. A deeply tired woman who had just endured 5 punishing hours crammed into a coach-class seat. I hailed a taxi to the hotel, my heart hammering in my chest with pure, giddy excitement. I couldn't wait to see the expression of stunned delight on Adrian's face when I knocked on the door of his penthouse suite. The taxi glided smoothly to a stop directly in front of the Grand Meridian, and I felt that familiar, quiet surge of pride. The structure was a tower of architectural brilliance, gleaming with imported Italian marble and spectacular gold accents. The grand fountains out front spraying water high into the perfect afternoon sun. My husband built this, I thought, this entire vision, realized through his relentless hard work. Carlos, the impeccably uniformed doorman, stood sentinel at the entrance. As I approached, dragging my travel-weary self, he looked me up and down, paused for an uncomfortable beat, and then slowly opened the door with an expression on his face. A subtle, barely concealed wrinkling of his nose that suggested he had just caught a whiff of something unpleasant. I noticed the reaction, the obvious judgment, but I dismissed it immediately. Maybe he was having a miserable day, I rationalized. I walked through the massive, golden, revolving doors and into the sprawling, jaw-dropping lobby. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars glittered overhead, reflecting dazzling light off the marble floors so flawlessly polished you could almost see your soul in them, and massive floral arrangements of fresh exotic blooms scented the air everywhere. It was breathtakingly beautiful, an architectural triumph. A handful of guests idled around, all encased in stiff, expensive suits or liquid silk designer dresses. I headed straight for the sweeping reception desk, ready to check in and race upstairs to surprise Adrian. The receptionist, a young woman named Jessica, according to the tiny, tasteful name tag pinned to her pristine blazer, was engrossed in a phone call. She glanced up at me. I swear I saw a theatrical, slow eye roll before she shifted her body slightly, turning her back to me as if I were a particularly dull piece of furniture. I stood there patiently waiting. 1 minute crawled by, then 2, then 3 agonizing minutes. She was clearly gossiping with a friend, laughing loudly about weekend resort plans, while I stood there, utterly invisible and increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, after what felt like a geological epic, she hung up the phone with an audible click and looked at me with the coldest, most brittle expression I had ever encountered. "Can I help you?" Her tone was instantly glacial, conveying that merely acknowledging my existence constituted a monumental personal favor on her part. I smiled warmly, determined to kill her icy demeanor with my own simple kindness. "Yes. Hi, I have a reservation. Camila Rodriguez." She began typing on her keyboard with deliberate, painful slowness, her long, sharp acrylic nails clicking rhythmically against the plastic. She stared intensely at the screen, then back at me, then back to the screen again, dragging the process out. "I don't see any reservation under that name." My smile faltered, dropping a fraction. "That's strange. I booked it online yesterday. Let me pull up the confirmation." I quickly retrieved my phone and opened the email, extending it so she could clearly see the confirmation number and reservation details. Jessica barely bothered to give it a cursory glance. That could easily be photoshopped. Anyone can fake one of those these days. I blinked, genuinely stunned. "I'm sorry. What? Why on earth would I take the time to Photoshop a hotel confirmation?" "Ma'am, we get all kinds of people attempting to scam their way into luxury hotels like this. Can you check again? Perhaps you mistakenly booked at a different location." The way she pronounced the words luxury hotels was deliberate, a sonic slap that implied I couldn't possibly belong in such an elevated space. I drew a deep, calming breath, determined to keep my composure. "No, it's absolutely this location. Can you please check again? Maybe try under my husband's name, Adrian Rodriguez." Her eyebrow, perfectly sculpted, arched skeptically. "Adrian Rodriguez. The Adrian Rodriguez. You are claiming you are married to the actual owner of this entire hotel chain?" She let out a small, cutting laugh, and I noticed 2 other employees, a bellboy named Ben and another receptionist named Sophia, had completely stopped their tasks to eagerly watch our exchange. They were leaning toward each other, whispering, both wearing smug, knowing smirks. "Yes, I am. Can you please just check the reservation details?" Jessica let out a heavy, dramatic sigh, clearly performing for her gathered colleagues. "Sure, honey. Let me check for your husband." More theatrical slow typing. A well-dressed guest had lined up behind me, huffing impatiently and ostentatiously checking his watch. I could feel my face growing hot with acute embarrassment, but I forced myself to remain still and calm. That's when the cavalry arrived, the manager. "Jessica, is there a problem here?" Her voice was sharp, commanding, and heavily authoritative. She was strikingly tall, encased in a severe, expensive-looking burgundy pantsuit. Her hair pulled back so tightly into a chignon that it looked genuinely painful. Her name tag identified her as Patricia, Guest Services Manager. Jessica's face instantly brightened, as if she had been desperately waiting for high-level backup. "Patricia, we have a situation. This woman claims she has a reservation, but I can't find a trace of it in the system. She also claims to be married to Mr. Rodriguez." Patricia turned her attention to me, and the look she gave me sent a heavy stone dropping straight into my stomach. It was a look of pure, unadulterated judgment and sharp disgust. She systematically looked me up and down, a slow, clinical appraisal, taking in my messy travel hair, my old, comfortable clothes, and my scuffed, loved sneakers. "What exactly seems to be the problem here?" The emphasis on "here" felt heavily intentional, suggesting that I was the anomaly, the infectious problem simply by existing in her pristine domain. I explained everything again, calmly and clearly, holding out the confirmation email. Patricia barely even glanced at the screen. Instead, she crossed her perfectly manicured arms over her chest and tilted her head in a condescending manner. "Ma'am, Are you genuinely certain you can afford our rooms? Our most basic standard rooms begin at $800 per night. Perhaps there has been some unfortunate confusion on your part. Have you checked the budget motel down on 5th Street? The ambient noise in the lobby seemed to suddenly drop out, though maybe that was just the rush of shame and panic in my ears. I can afford it. I have a reservation. I showed you the confirmation. Patricia turned back to Jessica, cutting me off. Did you at least verify her credit card? Jessica swiped my card again, this time with a flourish of theatrical slowness. We all waited in agonizing silence. A loud, piercing beep cut the silence. It declined. That's impossible, I exclaimed, my voice trembling slightly, laced with the first hint of panic. Try it again, please. Patricia's lips stretched into a thin, cruel smirk. Ma'am, we do not accept non-functioning cards. And honestly, this entire fantastic story about being married to Mr. Rodriguez. Do you really expect any of us to believe such a ridiculous claim? Jessica leaned in to whisper to Sophia, ensuring her words were loud enough for me to hear clearly. Probably stolen anyway. A nearby woman, elegantly dressed in a Chanel suit, muttered audibly to her companion. Some people truly have no shame trying to scam their way into luxury hotels. I felt the pristine, cold walls of the lobby physically closing in on me. More guests were slowing down, this growing audience intent on enjoying my humiliation. I want to speak to the general manager right now. Patricia actually let out a short, sharp burst of laughter. I am the manager, and I am telling you explicitly that you need to leave this property immediately. Then call the owner. Call Adrian. Patricia's laughter intensified, mocking and loud. The owner? You honestly believe the owner has time to deal with this? With you? She turned away sharply to Jessica. Should we involve the police, or is security sufficient? My hands were shaking violently as I frantically attempted to call Adrian myself. It went straight to voicemail, exactly as I feared. He was undoubtedly stuck in a deep business meeting. Patricia watched my failed attempt and shook her head mockingly. Oh, making fake calls now. This is truly getting pathetic. She pulled the radio attached to her suit jacket. Frank, we need you at reception immediately. We have a trespasser refusing to vacate. I am not trespassing. I have a reservation. My voice was rising now, edged with pure desperation. Within 60 seconds, 2 enormous security guards materialized. Frank and Tony, judging by their large tags, both looked like they had been cast straight out of an action movie, all intimidating muscle and sheer bulk. Patricia jabbed a pointed finger at me, treating me like a piece of refuse that needed immediate disposal. Escort this woman out of the hotel. She is trespassing and actively attempting to defraud us. I couldn't process that this was actually happening to me. Please, just listen to me. I am telling you the truth. I am Camila Rodriguez. This is my husband's hotel. I own. Frank grabbed my left arm. His grip was instant, crushing, and terribly painful. Tony seized my right arm just as roughly. Let's go, lady. Don't make this necessary harder than it needs to be. Don't touch me. Let go of me right now. I struggled fiercely to pull away, but their massive grips only tightened, digging bone deep. They began dragging me forcefully toward the revolving exit doors, my feet stumbling clumsily over the perfectly polished marble floor. My backpack slipped off my shoulder, crashing heavily to the ground, and everything spilled out. My phone, my small wallet, keys, a cheap lip balm, all scattered across the vast, pristine floor. Leave it, Patricia called out triumphantly, walking a few steps behind us as though enjoying a high-quality theatrical performance. Security will toss it in the trash where it belongs. This is exactly what happens when people attempt to scam luxury hotels. Let this be a lesson to all. Ben, the smirking bellboy, actually kicked some of my scattered belongings aside as we passed, letting out a callous laugh. Sophia was holding up her phone, clearly recording the entire spectacle. Other guests had their phones out too. I heard a muffled voice say, "This is definitely going viral." Hot, scalding tears were streaming down my face now. not only from the sheer magnitude of the humiliation but from the acute physical pain of their cruel grip on my arms, and the overwhelming injustice of it all. We were maybe 10 feet from the exit. I could see the golden revolving doors looming closer. Frank and Tony were practically lifting me off the ground, rushing me toward the street. "Please," I begged, my voice cracking, fragile. "Just let me explain." "Save it, lady." Frank grunted, his face impassive. "We've seen your type before. You people think you can just walk into places like this and... ding. The soft, elegant sound of the executive elevator chime sliced cleanly through the chaos. Everything seemed to slow down, entering a state of hyperfocus. The door slid open silently, and there he was. Adrian, my husband, home early to surprise me, stood framed in the doorway. He was wearing his impeccable charcoal suit, his slim briefcase held loosely in one hand, looking tired from the travel but undeniably happy, until his eyes landed squarely on the horrific scene unfolding directly in front of him. I watched his expression shift in real time. First, sheer confusion, his eyes narrowing, trying desperately to reconcile the images. Then, devastating recognition. That was his wife being violently dragged across the lobby floor by hired security guards. And then, finally, absolute primal rage. Pure, unfiltered, terrifying fury. His face instantly turned a deep, alarming red. His jaw clenched so rigidly I could see the muscle throbbing even from across the room. "Stop!" His voice boomed through the entire space, a shattering sound that echoed off the marble and crystal. It was a command laced with an authority I had never heard him use before. Terrifying, absolute, and commanding silence. Everyone froze instantly. Frank and Tony's hands remained clamped painfully on my arms, but their forward motion had ceased completely. Every single person in that lobby, staff and guests alike, whipped their heads around to stare at the powerful, furious man who had just emerged. Patricia, who had been glowing with victory seconds earlier, looked utterly confused. Adrian strode toward us, his pace increasing with every step. He wasn't simply walking. He was charging like a force of nature. I said stop. Patricia, still failing to grasp the gravity of the situation, stepped slightly forward. "Sir, this absolutely does not concern you. We are simply removing a trespasser who... Release her, now." The way he delivered the command left no possible room for discussion or argument. It was a final, absolute edict. Frank and Tony immediately released my arms, stepping backward instantly, their hands raised in a gesture of sudden, panicked surrender. Adrian reached me in mere seconds, his hands gently cupping my tear-streaked face, his furious eyes scanning my body rapidly for any signs of injury. "Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? Camila, baby, look at me. Are you okay?" I couldn't formulate words. I just shook my head numbly and collapsed forward into his chest. The dam finally breaking as deep, rattling sobs racked my body. His strong arms instantly wrapped around me, pulling me into the safest, most protective embrace I knew. I felt the powerful, rapid hammering of his heart against my cheek. Behind us, I heard Patricia's voice, now small and laced with confusion and dawning horror. "Mr. Rodriguez." We didn't. Then the shattering realization hit her. I felt the instantaneous change in the dense, silent air of the lobby. "Oh my God. Oh my God. She's really..." Adrian gently pulled back slightly, his hands still anchored firmly on my shoulders, forcing me to look into his eyes. "Tell me everything. Right now. What exactly did they do to you?" Through my thick tears, I told him the whole story. Every humiliating detail. How Jessica had made me wait and treated me like trash. How Patricia had coldly mocked me, suggested I should go to a budget motel, and then openly accused me of attempting fraud. How they claimed my credit card was stolen. How they had called me a bald-faced liar when I revealed I was his wife. How the security guards had grabbed me, brutally dragged me, and how my personal things were kicked aside. How I had been utterly humiliated in front of dozens of people. With every single word I uttered, I watched Adrian's face grow darker, more formidable. His jaw tightened further, A thick vein in his forehead began to visibly throb. When I finally finished my tearful account, he slowly turned to face Patricia, and the look he fixed on her could have instantly frozen fire. What did you do? It was not a question seeking information. It was the delivery of a death sentence. Patricia's face had bled from a shocked red to a terrifying, ashen white in seconds. Mr. Rodriguez, I didn't know. She didn't properly identify herself. She gestured vaguely at my comfortable clothes, then instantly regretted the move, snapping her hand back. She looked what, Patricia? I thought. We have protocols for. I was only protecting the hotel's standards. Her voice was shrinking, becoming a pathetic squeak with each syllable. Standards? Adrian's voice was now deadly quiet, which was somehow infinitely more terrifying than his initial booming yell. Your standards include judging people by the clothes they wear, physically seizing them, humiliating them publicly, and physically assaulting my wife? The word wife resonated through the silent lobby like a thunderclap. A collective gasp rose from the gathered crowd. Jessica looked dangerously close to fainting on the spot. Frank and Tony had backed up several additional steps. Adrian pulled his phone from his pocket. Harper, get to the Grand Meridian now. I don't care if you are in a board meeting. I don't care if you are at your daughter's wedding. Get here in the next 15 minutes, or you can start looking for a new career. Mr. Harper was the regional director, Adrian's trusted right-hand man. If Adrian was calling him with that tone, the situation had just escalated beyond serious. Adrian turned his gaze to the security guards. Frank and Tony, is it? Stay exactly where you are standing. Move 1 inch and I will personally have you arrested for aggravated assault. He looked at Patricia, his eyes burning. You two don't even think about leaving this area. Then he addressed Jessica behind the counter. Come out from behind that desk right now. Jessica was openly crying, trembling. Please, Mr. Rodriguez. I desperately need this job. I have massive student loans. I can't. You should have thought about your student loans before you physically assaulted my wife. Before you brazenly called her a scammer. Before you openly enjoyed humiliating her. I instinctively bent down to begin collecting my scattered belongings. An older guest, a respectable woman wearing an elegant pearl necklace who had silently watched the entire ordeal, knelt down immediately to help me. I am so terribly sorry, dear, she whispered, her voice filled with quiet shame. I should have stepped in and said something. We all should have, I whispered back, collecting my keys. Adrian helped me stand, slipping his arm tightly around my waist, anchoring me to him. More guests were gathering now, watching the scene unfold with intense focus. Some looked deeply ashamed, others simply stunned. A few were still recording discreetly. 14 minutes later, Mr. Harper burst through the revolving doors, his face flushed scarlet, his expensive tie askew. He took one look at Adrian's dangerously calm expression and instantly went pale. Sir, what in God's name happened? Your staff, Adrian stated slowly, deliberately, just physically assaulted, publicly humiliated, and attempted to forcibly remove my wife from our hotel. Our hotel? Harper, the one we built on the fundamental principle that every single human being deserves dignity and respect. Harper turned to look at me, his eyes widening in pure, unmitigated horror. Mrs. Rodriguez. Oh God. Oh my God. He whirled back to face Patricia. What have you done? Patricia tried again to explain, her words tumbling over each other in a desperate mess. She didn't say who she was. She looked ordinary. We deal with scammers constantly. How were we supposed to know? And that makes it okay? I found my voice, stronger now, fueled by the adrenaline. That makes it okay to treat someone like garbage simply because they look ordinary to you? Patricia opened her mouth to argue, then clamped it shut. She had no answer left. Harper pulled out his radio, his hands visibly shaking. I need the security footage from the main lobby for the past hour. Send it directly to my tablet immediately. We moved into a small, private office adjacent to the lobby. Adrian kept his arm wrapped around me the entire time, a comforting, protective weight. Within minutes, Harper had the high-definition footage pulled up. We watched the sickening narrative unfold. My patient waiting at the desk. Jessica's visible eye rolls. Patricia's cold, cruel smile. The escalating mockery. Frank and Tony violently grabbing my arms. Ben the bellboy carelessly kicking my wallet aside. Sophia filming and laughing. Every horrible, gut-wrenching second was captured in crystal-clear quality. Harper's hands were trembling violently. This is absolutely unacceptable. This is grounds for immediate termination. All of them. Adrian stood up, his decision already carved in stone. Gather them. All of them. Main lobby. Now. 5 tense minutes later. Patricia, Jessica, Frank, Tony, Ben, and Sophia stood in a ragged, terrified line in front of the reception desk. Other staff members had gathered nearby, confused and visibly scared. Guests watched from a respectful, distant perimeter. Adrian stood before them, and when he spoke, his voice was measured, hard, and carried to every corner of that vast lobby. I built this entire global company on one core principle. Treat people with dignity. Every single person, whether they are rich or poor, whether they are dressed in designer clothes or wearing jeans from a thrift store, it does not matter. Everyone deserves respect. What happened here today is the complete, unforgivable opposite of everything we stand for. He pointed a steady finger directly at Patricia. You are fired. Effective immediately. You have precisely 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises. Security will escort you out. Patricia's legs actually buckled beneath her. But I have worked here for 12 years. I have a mortgage. I have kids. You should have thought about your mortgage before you ordered my wife to be dragged across this floor like a common criminal. You had 12 years to learn basic human decency. You failed. He moved to Jessica, who was trying desperately to hide behind Sophia. Fired. You actively participated in the humiliation. You called her a scammer. You laughed. Please. Jessica was openly sobbing now, massive tears streaming. I'll do anything. I need this job. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. You are not sorry that you did it? Adrian corrected her in a chilling tone. You are only sorry that you got caught. There is a difference. Frank and Tony were next. You put your hands on a woman. You hurt her. You dragged her. Fired. Both of you. Frank tried feebly to defend himself. We were just following orders, sir. Following orders to be cruel? Following orders to assault someone? That is your defense? Adrian shook his head in disgusted dismissal. Get out. Ben, the grinning bellboy who had kicked my belongings. Fired. Sophia, who had filmed the humiliation and laughed. Fired. All 6 of them stood there in paralyzed shock. Some were crying uncontrollably. Patricia had actually dropped to her knees, begging and pleading, but Adrian was utterly unmoved. Harper called a separate security detail, new, different guards, to escort the 6 terminated employees out. One by one, they were walked through the same revolving doors they had tried to forcibly push me through, the same exit they had mocked me toward. The lobby was instantly silent, save for the pathetic, fading echo of Patricia's sobs as she was led away into the afternoon sun. Adrian turned back to face the remaining, terrified staff members. Let this be absolutely clear to every single person remaining here. This kind of behavior will never be tolerated. Not here. Not anywhere within our company structure. We will be implementing immediate, company-wide changes. Mandatory respect training for every employee, new mystery shopper programs, a complete review of all our policies, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. He looked squarely at Harper, who seemed to have aged 10 years in as many minutes. You are on probation, Harper. You hired these people. You trained them. This systemic failure happened under your direct watch. You have 6 months to prove to me that this incident will never, ever happen again. Understood? Harper nodded stiffly, his face pale and drawn. Understood, sir. It won't. I promise you. Adrian gently took my hand and led me to the executive elevator. As the brass doors closed, I looked out and saw the faces of everyone left in that lobby. Shame, shock, profound fear. Good. They should feel all of those things. Upstairs, in the silent, magnificent penthouse suite, Adrian held me while I finally cried. Truly cried. All the crushing fear, the public humiliation, and the physical pain poured out of me in heavy, shuddering waves. He didn't try to talk me out of it. He just held me tightly, stroking my hair, allowing me to process every agonizing emotion I needed to feel. When I finally calmed down, he pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes serious and gentle. Do you want to change how you dress? I'll understand completely if you do. For safety. No, I cut him off instantly, shaking my head. No, Adrian. I won't. I refuse to let their judgment change who I am. I refuse to fundamentally change the core of who I am simply because some individuals lack the vision or generosity to look beyond superficialities. This entire debacle, what transpired today, was a profound test of character. Theirs, not mine. They failed spectacularly. But I will not compound that failure by abandoning my own authenticity and transforming into some polished, sterile version of myself. He watched me, his expression softening as he spoke. Then he offered that familiar, devastatingly honest smile, the very one that had captivated me across a chipped formica table in that dusty little diner 4 years earlier. He squeezed my hand gently. That's my girl. You handled that with perfect grace. The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. Within mere hours, those casually captured guest videos, showing the entire humiliating exchange, catapulted into the stratosphere of the internet. By the next morning, the view count had already surged past 50 million. The hashtag Justice for Camila was not just trending locally. It had become a global flashpoint, dominating feeds from Tokyo to London. The narrative was inescapable. It dominated legacy news outlets, fragmented across every social media platform, and fueled passionate debates on every major morning and late-night talk show. The consensus wasn't just outrage. The incident forced a crucial public discussion about systemic classism, the chronic mistreatment and exploitation of service workers globally, the fundamental importance of human dignity, and the pervasive, dangerous way we preemptively judge others based solely on the facade of their clothing. I seized that unparalleled moment of global attention to finally launch the initiative that had been germinating in my mind for months. A comprehensive non-profit foundation I proudly named Dignity for All. Our mission was ambitious and clear. We provide cutting-edge, mandatory free training programs for hospitality workers, focusing on the critical ethics of interacting with every guest, regardless of perceived status, treating each one with inherent, non-negotiable respect. Furthermore, the foundation offers full-ride vocational scholarships tailored specifically for aspiring professionals coming from low-income and marginalized backgrounds who seek meaningful careers in the service industry. Crucially, we proactively partner with major hotel chains and resorts worldwide, assisting them in completely overhauling and implementing progressive internal policies and best practices that enforce a culture of true equity and respect from the top down. As for Patricia, Jessica, and the handful of others who had chosen hostility that day, their recorded malice was now etched indelibly into the digital stone of the internet. Their names, once obscure, were now searchable relics of bad behavior. When any potential employer ran a standard background check or simply Googled their names, the viral story detailing their public cruelty was the first defining result. I won't pretend I relished their misfortune. I didn't feel a gratifying surge of schadenfreude. But neither did I harbor any sense of guilt or regret. It was simply the inescapable truth. Actions, particularly those taken with such deliberate unkindness, have immediate and lasting consequences. Approximately 3 months later, I decided to make an unannounced return visit to the Grand Meridian. The atmosphere was palpably different. A sweeping internal audit and a commitment to change meant the entire existing staff had undergone rigorous retraining using the Dignity for All curriculum. Furthermore, new hires were brought in under a mandatory values-first approach to guest interaction. I walked through the towering glass doors wearing the exact same outfit, the comfortable, slightly faded jeans and my favorite dark gray cardigan. The difference was immediately apparent. The new receptionist, a young woman with bright, alert eyes, smiled genuinely and warmly as I approached the desk. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Grand Meridian. How may I assist you this afternoon? There was no dismissive sizing up, no calculating or suspicious glance that swept from my shoes to my hairstyle. Just pure, unvarnished professionalism and kindness. "I have a reservation," I stated clearly, offering only my name. "Camila Rodriguez." "Perfect. Allow me to retrieve your details and get you checked in right away, Mrs. Rodriguez." She paused, her smile widening into one of genuine admiration. "And, if I may be so bold, it truly is an honor to meet you. Your foundation's training program, Dignity for All, it completely changed the trajectory of my career and my perspective on this industry." That moment right there, standing in the lobby that had once been the site of such needless humiliation, felt like the culmination of the entire journey. That single recognition made every struggle, every frustrating phone call, and every dollar invested absolutely worth it. So, reflecting on the whole experience, here are the main takeaways I want to share. The surface-level lesson is certainly catchy. You simply never know who you are addressing. The individual dressed in worn-out denim might be the primary investor in the establishment. The tired-looking mother struggling with a stroller might be an internationally renowned philanthropist. But let me stress the far more crucial lesson, the one that must supersede the rest. It shouldn't matter. We must learn to treat every single person we encounter with fundamental kindness and genuine respect because they are, quite simply, human beings. That is the bedrock. That's the only necessary reason anyone should ever require to extend common decency. If this narrative resonated with you, if it stirred a feeling of anger, inspiration, or recognition, I urge you, hit that like button immediately. Engage with this story. Drop a detailed comment below and let me know exactly what decisive words you would have offered Patricia if you had been standing in my exact position that day. And please, subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell, because I'm committed to sharing many more real-life accounts dedicated to dignity, mutual respect, and the transformative power of treating people correctly. Don't forget to share this video widely with anyone you feel needs to hear this vital message. Because when all is said and done, fundamental kindness requires absolutely zero monetary investment, but its value is truly incalculable. Remember the cautionary tale. You never truly know the identity of the person you are judging, but infinitely more important, every single person on this earth deserves your inherent respect simply by virtue of their shared humanity. That premise is the only truth that should ever matter. Thank you profoundly for spending this time listening to my story. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.